It's
whole.
a unique space in that it doesn't have any structural steel upstairs to rig anything from at all. So everything up there is constructed of wood, large wooden trusses and wooden joists. So the performers, so what we're going to do with these trusses is they create sort of a false ceiling for the performers to swing from. Because if you're going to rig them all the way up 60 feet, or if you look up, you can see there's joists all the way up about 60 feet above you, maybe if you look past the lights. If you're going to swing from there, the radius would get too large too quickly. So what they really want is a place to swing from that's kind of in line with the proscenium. So in order to do that, we have to build kind of a false ceiling with some heavy-duty truss, which is what these are over here. They'll be bolted together and create that ceiling. So the problem with all that, of course, is that it weighs a lot. The truss and the chain motors, so those hang off these chain hoists, which are these guys. Which weigh about 160 pounds each. So you get to close to 1,000 pounds, you need to hang just before you're hanging the actual people. And luckily they're small people, but they don't weigh that much. So what we have to do to get around that with the joists is we need to be able to spread out that load. So we have more truss like that you can't see, that's all the way up in the ceiling there and is laying across several joists, so it's spreading out that load, so it's kind of marrying those together and borrowing their capacity. What else? So that's the hanging issue.
That water thing.
Oh, that water thing. Thank you. Yeah. So the other issue then is the weight of the aerialists themselves, and they require 1,500 pounds of counter ballast to anchor them. So it's a steel rope. It's going to drop down, go up to a pulley, go across to the end of that truss, drop back down, anchor off to that, and then head back off stage.
Yeah. What he's pointing to, if you look over here, this is a huge tub of water, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
It's 300 gallons altogether. So 1,500 is the weight that they require to ballast themselves. And like I said, they're not that heavy, but they will be, sort of tumbling down things and arresting their own weight. Also, they'll be being pulled up, and there's the centrifugal force of them spinning around. So 1,500 pounds is what they request, so 1,500 pounds is what we give them, because I'm not a physics PhD. I don't know how much force that is when you're spinning, pulling, and doing all that. So you have to count on that weight, plus the weight of the entire system, when taking all that into account, plus some permanent things like fire curtains and other things that are up there. So it's been a math challenge. We've had to bring in structural engineers to look at it, just to double check all the work, make sure we're safe. And hey, we're going to be okay, guys. Which was my word since the beginning of last year. Yeah, exactly. There's a hose and there's a mop closet right there, so we can fill it as it. We can have the bucket in. So that is what that is. And yeah, so when you see the performers actually raising and lowering in the air, know that off stage, right, no one else can see. There's a big gallon or a big bucket of water, and like 5-6 people actually pulling them with a rope. So that's part of what my crew is going to be doing. For harnesses, so it doesn't swing back and forth. They do have some custom clamps that they use either on the smoke pocket here, or if those don't work, because actually they haven't shown up yet. So I won't meet with them until 1 o'clock today. But then, if that doesn't work, what we're going to do is you have to ratchet strap them off to the pin rail on either side here and over here. And so that will keep it from swinging up and down stage as they move.
Has this been done before with a hold?
I don't know. I imagine. I sometimes wonder if this truss above the wooden joist thing is something we actually invented here. I don't know. We did use a similar method to hang speakers for Manny Patinkin about 8 years ago or more. He had an audio engineer who was very specific about what he needed. He needed being flown. And it was more weight than we could fly objects and joists alone, and again, we wanted the engineers involved, and that's when we actually purchased the truss that we used to sometimes hang greater weights over the stage at that time. So we've done this with similar, we've used this method before, in terms of this show's history with places like this, but I'm not certain. So we could be innovating a little bit here, innovating with very old materials. In terms of the shell, I think Diane talked about the shell a little bit. It was fun trying to get it to be symmetrical without. There was a lot of measuring, some more geometry than I'm used to doing to make it all look okay right now.
We're talking
In
about
terms
lighting.
of, yeah, lighting.
What you use that guy for?
Oh, well, that guy. That guy's gotten popular all of a sudden. That's just, anthropomorphizing a 4-foot stick of truss is what we're doing now. So the thing about light is that if there's nothing for it to bounce off of, you can't see it. Which when we have this 12-foot expanse of nothing where the performers are going to be, but are not yet, makes it difficult for me to program the lighting. So he just kind of stands right where the performer's going to be. He's a stand-in for them. And so you see, actually, we actually thought through a little bit. We have everything from white to black, and then some values in between for how much light's going to reflect off them, so that we can pre-program the lighting as best we can before they get here. There'll be some adjustments when they arrive, of course, but yeah, that's him. We haven't named him yet. I've been asked. Maybe you guys can help me. Maybe by the end of today, we can figure out what the name. I drew that face on him. I tried to make him look happy. I think he might look a little maniacal, though. I might have overshot. It's LED. It's interesting when you work with a show like this because they have lighting wants and needs, but their lighting package that they send is often it's vague because it has to fit in a lot of different spaces. So then it becomes, they'll do things like they've picked the 4 colors that we have over the orchestra, they've picked some of the colors that we have out here that aren't even on yet, but then it's up to us to supplement a lot of the other things like the lighting you see around the shell. Because every shell they go to, every space they go to has a different shell to work with, different different abilities, you know what I mean? Rent and what we make it look like. We since it is such a change, it's a unique. We want it to be able to make it a little bit of a centerpiece rather than make it look odd. So I think it's going to work out great that way. And actually, I always like having a darker background for things like performers because it helps them stand out a little bit more against it. That's better than they would against a lighter field. So, yes.
Did they send a representative here to check out this space before you engaged them? You're kidding.
No.
No, we did, they were down in Philly and we were trying to get them to come up here to look at this, but we did talk with them in depth over the phone, and Kevin explained what our hall was and the size and what we could do, and we were assured by them that we could figure out how to make this work.
Yeah.
So.
And that's not unusual with touring shows. I mean, they just don't have representatives they can send from those. And that goes with things like this, but it also goes for the rock shows or the pop shows or children's shows or any of the variety of programming here. What we get a lot is that people are generally flexible. You know what I mean? If you're a touring act, you know that you're going to be going to a lot of different spaces, and you want to get booking.
Yeah.
So you're gonna make it work as best you can. I mean, that's just part about being a pro in the touring business, I think. So.
Yeah, I remember one of the things they told me that I was concerned of is these 6 guys Kevin talked about off stage is, they were saying they needed 20 feet of pull space. And I'm looking backstage going, even if we go through the dressing rooms round the corner, we don't really have 20 feet. But they'll figure out how to make it work, Maybe that's why we have to have more guys.
Right.
So we can pull in a shorter amount of space and have more ability. But yeah, it's, and really, I think it's just the flying stuff that is the difficulty. The rest of the stuff is mostly juggling, it's ribbon dancing, it's things that can be done in this space very safely. They've got a lot of space to work with. So it's really the flying part, but we didn't want to do the show without that, because that's what people are coming for.
And to their credit, that's one of those things too, where before we had the engineers in and all that other stuff, I wasn't completely positive we could do the flying. But you're a year out when you're booking it.
Right.
So it was important that they understood that, there's a possibility that it might
that we couldn't
end up
fly.
being a ground show only, and they were okay with that too, but of course, that's not what we wanted for our audience, so.
Right.
Yes, Sheila.
Hey, I just want to add that your next question should be, well, why don't we replace the wood grid with a steel grid? Well, guess what? We looked at that when we worked on the remodel, and so the first one of you to give me $30 million gets
30 million?
season tickets for golf.
30 million?
Yes, because in order to take the roof, you have to take the roof off. Because you can't put the steel on the stage and the lifts that it would be required to put a steel grid in without collapsing the building, so you have to do it from outside with a crane. And so we haven't made that a big priority yet. But I'll tell you that this is a real issue for symphonies as well as other performances. Because the times of walking in and having 80 men clad in black standing in front of a conductor waving a baton are pretty much over. And the more shows, and when Diane puts her shows together, they're very creative. And Kevin has a challenge every time in trying to accommodate it to our house, which when I came here, it was called a hemp house. I thought we had a drug problem. No, it's just because it's all done with ropes. It's very entertaining, and if you come back in sneakers, we'll take you up to the first level of the grid. But it is an inhibitor to the kinds of performances we can do now and have to do in the future. My personal expectation is just as you think about digital technology relative to the first computers in the 1980s, I expect that all of the things that are getting heavier and heavier will soon get lighter and lighter and smaller. And so that's my belief. I spent 27 years in technology. I think that's the direction it will go. First you get as big as it can stand, and then you start to shrink. But that's our challenge. But if you asked Kevin, as you also were planning to, well, if this is a great hall, is there anything you actually need backstage that's not $30 million worth of things? What would you say?
It's not $30 million. Like, get down to $10 million or something. We've had some improvements out here with lighting, but a lot of the lighting stuff is still rented. And a lot of the stuff you see around, all the LEDs that are uplighting here, all the LEDs that are footlights, and even some of the stuff in this new position with the balcony that we got, which is fantastic that we have it now, because prior to this, it used to just be those
Nothing.
10 units all the way up high. But now we have that new position, those new circuits, but we still don't have all the units that we could be using for those. So I'd say the most immediate, sort of easy fix backstage is the amount of lighting that we rent, especially on things like